From the Middle is proud to be a founding member of Odd Pods Media. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode 291 of From the Middle. We are three middle class guys in the middle of America, middle chapter of life, the point of view. There's somewhere in the middle. Hey, how much have you ever paid for fruit? Have you ever paid $19 for a single strawberry? And it gets even crazier than that. We talk about that, which brings us into restaurants. How much are you willing to pay for a good steak, or is good enough for you? Which then gets us into talking about the hierarchy of restaurants, which is a very complicated and long conversation that I'm not sure Dylan was expecting, but hey, he started it. And then, my friends, after the break, or maybe we're already after the break, we talk a little bit about Oscars. I'm sure there's going to be more Oscars talk in future episodes. And then we do a bunch of what we're streaming. Check it out.
Oh, for the love.
Sorry, just clearing my Mountain Dew hole.
I got my phone hole cleaned today.
That's where you keep it?
You're so cerebral and you're so developed and evolved. From the middle after dark over here.
What's up, guys?
Hey, guys. Good to see you.
Hey, that's a new background for you, Corey. What are you up to?
Oh, I'm at work on my lunch break. I've got one of those shirts on that's like the button is either hipster geek or mafia, and there's not a button in between.
So the second button from top is too tight.
It's not that it's too tight, it's just that I look too dorky if I do this. Like I'm
Gotcha.
It is
it's
an
either
awkward.
that or like, how you doing?
It's the mobster / David Hasselhoff / and you don't like have like an animal on your upper chest hair that would like stick out. You don't
No,
have
there's
that.
not like wings or like some cool tat that
They're just it'd be nice if you had just some kind of like a peak of a little something.
just a hint of
right?
one. I
Just
got
a
that
little,
here.
just a little.
But
Have people think like,
yeah,
what? I wonder what that.
just a little bit of a snake coming up my neck. How are you guys doing? It's good to see you. Happy Wednesday. This is one of the highlights of my week, hanging out with you guys.
Good.
Yeah, doing good.
Go
Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to kick us off with a quick little question of UPI news or UPI.com. I don't know exactly how to. Anyway, they have a really good feed of funny and odd news articles that I read through. A lot of times when I have a weird question or something, guys, it's because I came across one today that reminded me of something that I wanted to talk to you guys about. There in Japan, if you're not aware, I'm sure they have a fancy name for it, but there's this art of growing perfect fruit in Japan.
And
we're talking like
watermelon type things.
No, because like cubed water, they also do that. Like cubed watermelon is technically inedible. But like things like the cubed watermelon are for looking at, right? They're not for consumption, but they do the opposite of that too. They try to make the perfect orange, the perfect grapes. And they have different techniques and years and decades of studying and reforming and things like that. Sometimes it's to the extent of like, I don't know if this is an actual example, but they'll like grow like an apple tree, and then on like one branch they'll cull all of the apples except for one. And so now this apple tree that is sending all of like nature goodness into like 50 apples or probably more than that is sending it into like 5. And they take care of it. They'll like wrap it in something so that nothing can deform it or get in, like, and like very labor intensive, which makes them very expensive to buy these fruits.
Sure.
There's a place in Los Angeles that began importing these strawberries, and all of this stuff has a very low shelf life. And so at this like mom and pop market in LA.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Erewhon.
You can buy a $19 strawberry, one strawberry for $19. It's like packaged very carefully in its own like plastic clamshell thing. And so the question to you guys is this: when it comes to foods, this is an extreme example, which is why it's a good one to consider. Would you pay $19 for what people tell you is the best strawberry you will ever have? Or do you think, I mean, strawberries are pretty good. I believe you that this is probably the best one I've ever had, but how good can the best strawberry actually be? I'm not going to pay $19. Is that something you would do?
I'm torn because there's a piece of me that's like, for the content and for the story on the podcast.
Right.
Am I regularly going to buy my strawberries in this fashion? Absolutely not. If I'm there and I saw it and I'm with some friends and we're like, hey, why not? It's $20 for sure.
Yeah. Would you like split? Because they're pretty big strawberries.
Yeah, I'll cut it in half, share it with a friend.
Friend.
The strawberry specifically.
Go halfsies on a strawberry.
Yeah.
The strawberry specifically, I think, is a no at $19. But it does raise the question, if there was a quote perfect version of things that I consider to be my favorite food or fruit, would I consider that for a higher price? Like, if it's like the greatest chocolatier in the world created a perfect peanut butter cup for like $37, would I try it? I'd probably consider it. Like, if this is like the greatest version in the world of one of my favorite things, maybe. Strawberry wouldn't be. I like strawberries. It's not high enough on my list that I'd be like, let's $19, let's go.
Yeah. There's been a lot of content out recently. That one in particular, in the article that I read, so I didn't come across it in social media, but apparently it's gone viral. The daughter of these people who own this store, like, sent off a TikTok of herself trying one, and it created this whole big internet storm of people saying, "Oh, that's cool," or "That's crazy." People are just trying to see what people will pay money for. But I've seen previous videos, YouTube videos of some foodies in Japan, visiting Japan, like trying a handful of these fruits, and some of them are great, some of them aren't as expected. But then this expands out to, I think, dining and restaurants. And there's an example in Gehenna where, let's take steakhouses, for example. There's steakhouses where you can go and you buy the steak, the side is not included, and you end up spending $80-$90 for a normal steak meal. Or you can go to like Longhorn Steakhouse and get the exact same meal for like $25. Is the dining experience and everything else worth it, or is the steak that much of a better quality that makes it worth it? If you had the two right there in front of you, you either turn left or you turn right. Which one do you tend to turn into?
I'm not a food snob, so I wouldn't turn into the expensive one just for expensive food's sake. Because if at the end of the day you just want sustenance and red meat in your mouth, then go for the lesser option. But if you're like, I don't know, I could make a case where there are instances where you'd be like, what the heck? Let's just hashtag YOLO. I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm with friends. It's an experience. Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially like the point of diminishing returns question. Like, at what point, at what point do I cut it off? 98% of the time, I'm going to go with the Texas Roadhouse or Longhorns or whatever steak and just be perfectly fine with that. Are there certainly situations or occasions I'm traveling, it's an anniversary, it's a fancy something, sure, like that's going to happen here and there. That feels like the whole essence of being from the middle, right? Like, we're just at the end of the day, it's like, well, sure, I could go spend $60 on Mexican food, or I could go to Taco Bell and get, although that's $60 now too, but I could just go with the fast food option because I'm just a normal guy in the middle of the thing, and I don't live in New York or San Francisco or Miami or Chicago or wherever, trying to like hit up the nicest joints. It's always like it is an interesting question though, because how much difference can the average person taste in those things? Like on a $19 strawberry, if you just got a pretty good one from a $3.99 batch of strawberries from Kroger, are you going to notice that much more juiciness and flavor from a $19 one? Uh,
You don't know unless you do it.
right. Yeah.
See?
There's some value for sure in the trying of the thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's always going to come back to what do you care about or are you interested in the most? And I feel like there's a theme of YouTube videos that do this, like $5 steak versus $25 steak versus $150 steak. And they like try all of them. And then
Yes.
they react and they do something similar. I just feel like I'm almost never going to pick the more expensive thing just because,
Yeah.
it would take a lot for me to try it.
I feel like there's a lot of examples of this, right? Like you could go to a nice steakhouse and pay $200 for a tomahawk steak. There is a sweet treat restaurant in New York City called Serendipity 3 where you can get $1,000 sundae. It's got flecks of gold in it. And it's like people do it to say they've done it. And you have to order it 2 weeks in advance. They have to know you're coming. They'll prepare it for you. There are $3,000 and above bottles of Pappy Van Winkle if you're into bourbon and things like that. But again, like, is this what I'm going to do every Sunday, or is this what I'm going to do on my 40th birthday? I keep creating scenarios where there's a group of people around me and it's like a fun,
Yeah.
hey, we did it, But to the comparison thing, it reminds me of when Mr. Beast and his friends tried like 7 different modes of flights, like the cheapest possible flight you could get. And then they stair-stepped all the way up to like private luxury airliners that was just them. And
Yeah.
like they videoed the difference of experience across the different levels of ways that you could travel. I thought that stuff like that's fascinating.
So what are some things that are no-brainers that it's not just a little more, it's kind of a lot more, but like you're like, okay, I would try that almost every time if I'm given a unique option to try something that's definitively better than the average experience.
So I've been employed at this company for 4.5 years and come to Seattle quite frequently. Never before has my wife joined me on a trip. She's with me this week in Seattle, and she came because we got $500. She found a deal for $500 off of a first class ticket. And first class, if it's within reach of the budget of that trip, that's a big qualifier, I admit. But if it's like not that much more, that to me is a no-brainer. I was in 34F and she's in first class, so I wasn't with her in first class because I can't justify that on my trip for work. But that is one of those like, man, if it's within your budget, not crazy much more expensive, first class.
What's crazy? Like more than double? Like
Trip
$500 to $750 is a yes.
Depends on the distance. If you're going to Australia, you'll look at like 3-4x. You're like, hey, that's 14 hours. I will still consider it. If it's New York, you're like, I'm never going to do it because it's only an hour-long flight, hour and 20-minute flight from Columbus. I'm never going to do that. It's a waste of money.
So potentially internationally, long distance, up to 3 to 4 times more, you'd think about it.
Yeah. Because 14 hours on a plane, 16 hours is a long time.
All right. So flights, Corey's flight. Anything else?
I feel like parking is that way for me these days. Didn't used to be. I used to not care. Especially with a family, but I think even without a family now these days. I used to go to Blue Jackets games regularly, and I would never, like, I would always pay for parking. You have to in downtown, but I would never use like the parking garages that are right there. Like I would drive around and find a place, like whether it be a flat rate lot or something along those lines, there was a smaller parking garage that was a handful of blocks away that was a lot cheaper than like the McConnell garage, which is right across the street from the stadium. And so I'd park there and walk. These days, no, I prepay for my parking in the McConnell garage and just do that because of how much easier that is.
Oh,
I'm not fussing around trying to find a parking spot. I'm following the flow of traffic instead of trying to figure out what kind of weird thing the traffic cones are trying to get people to do. Um, all of that stuff. So that's definitely one for me is good parking.
I would plus one that. We had friends invite us to an Ohio State game once where we got to stay at the Huntington Club level, and we got to pull up to the stadium that was had cones in front of it, and you flash your pass, and they go right this way, and you park right by the stadium, separate elevator.
Oh,
Ding.
dude.
Arrives right at the Huntington Club. Doors open up. There's like a buffet. Oh my gosh.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Versus walking how many miles from
Yeah.
Ackerman to get to
Right.
Ed?
Man, yeah, if you can score that kind of deal, man, that is obviously, I mean, it's so cool. Like we got my wife and I one time knew somebody whose job it was to sell season tickets and suites to clients. And so she just had a resource of free tickets to every single game that were supposed to be used, right, to try to like bring somebody in who's a potential buyer. And but sometimes it doesn't work out. And so like we got to use these tickets, and with these tickets came parking, not even across the street McConnell garage parking. We mean attached to the stadium.
Yeah.
Like they're a very small parking garage that is mostly empty because no one's allowed to park there. And so we had that experience of like showing the credentials and like, oh, let us move these cones for you.
Yeah.
Situation. That was beautiful.
Those are good ones. I feel like a hotel with like never looking at less than a king size bed at this point. I just don't. No interest. If they don't have a king, I'd more than likely just look at a different hotel than consider doing smaller than a king size bed. It's just so much. If I'm gonna not be in my own bed, which I enjoy, I at least want to enjoy another bed as much as I can.
Yeah.
For a hotel. And different than the $25 steakhouse to $100 steakhouse is different stage of life. But while at the $25 steakhouse or $30, whatever, don't just get the burger anymore. If I want the steak or seafood option within that price range, I'm just gonna do it. I don't, it's not a thing you always have the luxury of doing when you're younger. But when you start to establish yourself a little bit and you're like, steak sounds great, not thinking about it, just gonna get it. Way different to make that decision when the steaks start at $100. Way different when it's like the meal with the steak is $40 or $35 or $30 or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are pretty easy ones.
Love the opening prompt, Kendall. And by the way, creating the perfect fruit slowly over time sounds like the most Japanese thing to do ever.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I got to admit, there's a lot of them that I've seen that like I totally want to try and would buy once. I mean, some of them are astronomically not within reach, and I would never. But like a $19 strawberry, my answer is I would do it once.
Let's go.
Yeah. One thing that when I see videos like that, like food themed things in Japan, I'm always intrigued by the cleanliness and variety of their like 7-Eleven equivalent type stores and all the stuff. People will go like grab things off shelves to mix in the place and like microwave it. And there's always a sitting area. And then they buy a cup of ice and then they're pouring in drinks to make the thing. And that seems so much better than what we've done here.
Vending machines that produce hot food like at really good quality. You're like, how are they able to what? But they're like 10 years ahead of us.
This is America. We should have all the best food inventions. Even if we didn't start them, we should like import them to do here. And I'm not sure why we don't. Yeah. So speaking of food, this got me thinking because we were talking about chains and Roadhouse and Longhorns and stuff like that. Which also reminded me of one thing we've probably talked about before, the deliciousness that is Red Lobster Cheddar Bay Biscuits. I don't know if Red Lobster's gonna make it. They're hurting. But it raises a
Their
question.
Cheddar Bay biscuits are going to make it.
Someone is gonna buy that recipe and like,
Oh, you can buy it in the store right now. You can buy a mix, a box.
oh, that too. And also a restaurant will need to incorporate that.
Oh, yeah.
Like if they still have a common owner that like another
I think isn't Olive Garden with them?
Olive Garden maybe
Olive Garden starts serving Cheddar Bay biscuits.
they could just sell them, to be honest, because people would buy them. Sometimes places like that, in my opinion, have sides that are like the biscuits that are so good. You could, not saying you often would, but you could solely eat that side, and that could be your entire meal. I could go to Red Lobster and get a bag of biscuits and could be perfectly content just eating a bag of the biscuits and would not be upset about it in the slightest. Is that true for you? And what other ones do you have that you can think of?
Texas Roadhouse's rolls with the cinnamon. Is it cinnamon or brown sugar in the butter?
It's cinnamon butter, dude. And it
cinnamon
is
butter at Texas Roadhouse, like dripping. Are you kidding me? I could just have that and be perfectly content.
Absolutely. There's, well, I'll give a real answer, and then I'm not sure if it qualifies answer, but City Barbecue is a place where I'm not a huge pulled pork guy. Sometimes on a sandwich. I like brisket. Their brisket is like mushy. I'm not a huge fan of their brisket. I get their chicken often, but at City Barbecue, they have a meal where you just pick sides. You just choose sides. And I could totally do that. Like their baked beans and like their corn pudding alone, like those two things together, just give me a giant plate, half and half. I could throw that down very easily.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Now, are we including, because I've done this before many times, appetizers? There's a lot of appetizers that like I'll just order as an entree. I know a lot of people do that, but like nachos, for example, can be a very hearty appetizer, and if you order it for yourself or for two people, that can easily be a dinner. But one thing that I've done before, also relatively regularly, is mussels. So if I see mussels as an appetizer, like that's what I'm doing for dinner in a restaurant. You don't see them too often, but I love them. So I'll do that. And then same thing with like Old Bay shrimp cocktail things. There's two restaurants in Gahanna that have that. And I'll like get that in a salad or something like that.
Look, I'm not here to veto any responses. I would say the spirit of the question is things that would traditionally be sides.
Okay.
And America has very oversized and quite the variety of appetizers. You can get like burgers, wings, and French fries that are an appetizer.
Sure.
So I'm not gonna say no to some appetizers. An example might be if you really like Chili's mozzarella sticks, that feels like a side to me.
Okay.
If it's like a burger slider appetizer, probably not really what I had in mind.
Okay.
But the chips feel in the spirit of the thing. I was thinking of Chewy's, the Tex-Mex place. You can do like a sampler, like a flight of their queso and their creamy jalapeno and their salsa. Would be totally fine just sitting and eating chips with like a flight of their sauces. So that feels like a side, not like its own hearty appetizer.
Yeah.
If that feels fair.
How do you feel about charcuterie? Because there's a lot of places that have charcuterie as a starter that I could just sit and have that and a glass of wine and go home.
Yeah.
Well, most people aren't ordering charcuterie as their true meal. So I would say it doesn't feel like the spirit of an entree, like burger sliders or wings would. So that feels like a side. I would accept a really good charcuterie board.
There's a lot of places that I could just sit and have their fries with nothing else and dip it in some ranch and have a drink and go home. And be perfect.
Consider that dinner.
You'd be totally content if that was your dinner.
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
Like loaded fries almost feels like it doesn't count because you're adding like bacon and cheese and
Yeah, but
broccoli.
now you're in the nachos world again.
Yeah, nachos and tachos. That's another good example.
Yeah,
And
tachos.
yeah, that's a good one. Sometimes I feel that way with just mashed potatoes. Like I could certain places that do that really well, totally fine. Scallop potatoes could be totally fine. Just eating a bunch of. I don't know that I'd feel great about a baked potato on its own, but certain potato dishes, great. Count me in.
Kendall, I thought you were going to say about City Barbecue their mac and cheese. Now that is also an entree at other places. So like that's debatable. But
I think for once you're over the age of 12, it's a side.
okay.
It's no longer on the. It's only on the kids' menu
Yeah.
as an entree these days.
There's a sushi spot out here, and they have hand rolls and specialty rolls, and then omakase, and then you can do like nigiri and sashimi and whatever. My favorite thing though at the restaurant is their mushroom saute. It's like 3 different types of mushrooms sauteed and then served over whatever leafy green they happen to have. It's so freaking good, you guys, that I could just order the mushroom saute as a meal. Just eat mushrooms and greens, have some sake, and go home.
Is that like a sit down, like a nicer sushi place? It's not like a fast casual something.
Not fast casual, but it's not like super. It's not like Sugarfish or like, what's the big one in Vegas and New York and LA? Nobu. It's not like Nobu, but it's like it's more casual than that. But yeah, it's so good. When you guys come out, I'm gonna get you the mushroom saute because I know you're both mushroom fans.
Dude, I feel like Japanese places do mushrooms in really cool. Like, let me ask you this: is the mushroom saute like 15 different kinds of mushrooms, and you don't know what they are?
I think it's 3 to 5 different types of mushrooms.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a mushroom soup kind of that feels like the wrong word, but I feel like that's what it is that I get at a sushi place here called Tora, and it is like mushrooms that like look so exotic to me. Like what do I know about mushrooms? Little tiny ones, and there's a bunch of different kinds in there, and they just fill a small bowl with these mushrooms that are raw, and then they give you like a tea kettle filled with a delicious broth, and it's you pour it yourself. The broth over the mushrooms, let them sit for a minute, and then go to town. I love it. I love it.
Well, now that we've got everybody hungry, let's give them some time to run off and grab themselves a snack or a mushroom or a Cheddar Bay roll. And we'll be right back with some more.
Hey, I'm Pantsless Aaron.
This is Stevie.
And I'm Augie.
And we are BFYTW, a podcast all about playing games and having fun. Our games are usually based on British panel shows and game shows, but we'll play anything that captures our attention and imagination. Why? It's right there in the title.
You'll never guess what the F stands for.
So I feel like I can pretty easily circle back to the sit down versus fast casual question. I don't know if things are simpler here because this is the Midwest of the United States. Maybe this is a more complicated question if you're in New York or LA or Miami or whatever. But here, what feels true is there's essentially 4 categories of a place you're going to go eat, since we're talking about food and restaurants and high end and whatever. It's basically like fast food, and then you go to fast casual, and then it's like sit down, and then nice sit down. Like really nice. So like sit down could be like your Texas Roadhouse or your Longhorns. Nice sit down is going to be anything that's like the nice steakhouses, white tablecloth type things. Does that feel accurate for the Midwest? That's essentially the hierarchy of the options. Fast food, fast casual, sit down, nice sit down.
Yeah.
Nice sit
those
down can
categories.
be.
I think they're inclusive. You've broken it down in such a way that I can't think of a type of restaurant that's not in those 4.
You could call nice sit down fine dining. You could probably swap the term. So my question then here, where do sub shops and pizza shops fall? And are they like not part of that hierarchy? Do they get their own? They're just they're off to the side. If you're imagining a picture version of this with like arrows pointing up and up and up are like sub shops and pizza shops like off to the side? Or do you throw them in with fast food or fast casual? Because then I have questions.
You know, sometimes I see rankings out there about like most successful fast food chains across the globe, and I see like Domino's and Little Caesars on that list, and I think to myself, are we really? That's not what I think of when I think of it. I think you're right. Like pizza seems to be its own thing in that it doesn't fit into that category. And because I feel like even if there's a fine dining establishment trying to do pizza, they're not doing it better than pizza shops.
Yeah.
I feel.
I
don't know.
The other way I'm thinking about it is maybe you can't say those are categories because you just have to sort the pre-existing options into the four. So the cheapest of pizza national chains we would just call fast food. But if you have your local wood-fired, coal-fired, like create your own pizza in front of you, whatever, does that enter fast casual? And now you're just going through one by one and placing them into the different categories that already exist because
yeah, but there's so many things that don't apply, such as like what's the ambiance of the building that you walk into to the counter, right? Because good pizza places are often like dingy and they don't care what the inside of their store looks like, but their pizza is better than anyone else's around.
Right.
And then you have like pizza that like are the size of sit down restaurants, but they're like cheap pizza buffets, which are probably worse pizza than what you would consider to be fast food pizza.
Right.
Well, with both of these restaurants, you've got establishments where they have little to no seating at all. And you're basically just going to a walk up, grab your pizza and go thing. Like I think of Wario's Beef and Pork, where Kendall, you and I went there. I think they have a couple two-seaters outside of but it's not really meant for that because it's downtown and amidst a bunch of corporate offices where people go up to a window, pay, grab their sandwich and go.
Yeah, and you sit and eat in what feels more like a common space. It's not really their space.
Yeah.
They might be their own categories because I'm also thinking like, let's not even kind of pretend that Subway and Firehouse Subs are both like the same, are going to be in the same category. Like Subway's fine, but it's never going to be Firehouse or a real like Wario's, a sandwich shop like that. And that's even like another tier above like Firehouse. So if they're their own category, are there any other categories we're missing?
Food trucks?
Does that get too granular? Are food trucks fast food?
Oh, food trucks makes it. Food trucks feel more like fast casual to me.
Yeah,
I would put them closer to fast casual than fast food.
And like the Wario's example, they oftentimes will circle up around an area with lots of seating, and the seating belongs to none of the places. But we saw this in Maui where there was like a square, 4 on each side, and they were just around a bunch of picnic tables. And it was like a congregation of food trucks where they know there's going to be a lot of people who know we're here. But they have no private or whatever.
And then you have to this is where it gets so nuts in my mind, because now I'm thinking of more exceptions in the food truck world where like I would say by and large the current food truck trend is I would put with the fast casual category, but then there's like the truck that sits outside of like Home Depot, right?
Like
like that's not the same thing
as in Westerville. There's the barbecue pit that is outside of Home Depot that I think has one picnic table, but it's meant to be it's a tiny and it's one guy making barbecue.
Yeah.
And it's a fixed building, but he's got a little pull up for people to just grab their barbecue and go.
I've always been curious about that place. I've never been.
So So maybe the
And
hierarchy doesn't exist. Maybe it's the basketball power rankings quadrants, and it's like ambiance and quality, and it
yeah,
doesn't matter because it's like we shouldn't pretend that Applebee's is going to be better than all the food trucks because the hierarchy would suggest that it's higher than fast casual. Like
yeah,
a lot of food trucks could crush Applebee's.
This
yeah.
feels like the is a Pop-Tart ravioli thing. Like is is a taco. What did we already played this game in a different way. Like what are
It's
your
my favorite game
categories?
though.
It's
Yeah.
fixed location, mobile location, ambiance, no ambiance. Like menus,
Yeah.
no menus, pick up and go only, or sit down. Like there's
Yeah. Are we going to put a corn dog stand at the fair in the same category as Pete Abilities, the food truck?
Or is it food truck singular, like the one that always goes to that one bar? Is that a different experience than a collection of food trucks? Now are we talking about a different thing in your hierarchy?
Yeah, and is that better than a food court at a mall? Because that's certainly fast food, we would think.
Oh man.
I think anything that we would all collectively agree is pretty low quality would just be fast food by default.
Okay.
Like if you're walking up to a counter in a mall to order your lunch, it's the cafeteria, it's probably fast. We just lump it into fast food. It gets trickier when the food trucks and some of the small places are start being better than fast casual or even sit down, because now your hierarchy it doesn't feel accurate anymore.
What about fast casual places that offer a quick to go option like Chili's to go at the airport? It's a Chili's or an Applebee's, but they've got pre-made options with a separate register. When you're going between connecting, you just grab something to go.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Now you've got two categories under the same name.
No, that's still just a Chili's, even if it's a to-go counter.
We need a mock-up, Dylan. You need to sketch this out the way you see it, and then we can debate it further. I don't think we're prepared to make a final decision today.
I don't think so, but it raised a lot of good questions, and there's so many layers of thought that I might never be able to mock it up, but I'll try and see what I come up with.
I feel like we have to figure this out now.
I'm gonna start with the basketball quadrant rankings thing, and then see if I can start getting like PNG files of like the restaurant logos to like map out and like click and drag and move them around, because that feels like the most accurate. There's also like the tier maker websites that do like A, B, C, D, and then you can just like drop logos in. We maybe would have to do it in that, but I don't know if there's a grid. They need a grid. I think we're gonna need
It's a matrix.
We need
It's a
quality
matrix.
and environment, maybe not just ambiance, because maybe it needs to be a combination of like, it could be a really nice food truck or a really dirty sit down restaurant, and that matters. So
It
like,
does.
you know, I think those two. I think it's got to be environment and quality, and then we just work our way up to the top.
Kendall's right. It is incumbent upon us now to figure this out, and it's yeoman's work we're doing here, you guys. This is important stuff.
It is.
Speaking
It's true.
of people who can afford fancy restaurants and $19 strawberries, did you guys happen to watch the Oscars on Sunday?
Yes.
Okay, I haven't watched. I have it DVR'd. I thought that it would be on the flight over, but it was not. Live TV was not an option. So I don't want to know who won, but I'm really hoping that Conan did well. Did he I love Conan. Did he do good?
I feel like Conan it was non-remarkable.
So he didn't push the envelope. He didn't poke at people. He played the game and kept the Academy
I think he was
happy.
very safe.
Yeah, he made one,
which might make him a good host.
Yeah, I think he was mostly safe. I think he did like, there was like one or two sort of political jabs. I don't think they were that offensive, but like it, you know, depending on your sensitivity, maybe it would bother you, maybe it wouldn't. The Adam Sandler bit was funny, which I thought that was pretty good to have him do his shtick, which some people said was political and some wasn't. Doesn't matter. But he was fine. Yeah, he did a good job.
He's been in the industry long enough to know who of the suits he can poke at and when he needs to play the game and sort of just stay in line and be I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, divisive.
I mean, I feel like outside of a couple of weird moments, it was probably the most apolitical Oscars that I've seen in a while, which was nice.
Yeah.
Now I didn't catch most of it because PBS was showing Joe Bonamassa live at Red Rocks
Nice.
thing, which I was all about. And so I watched mostly that. And then when that was over, I finished the Oscars after flipping back and forth during Joe Bonamassa.
How have we not talked about this? I didn't know you were a Bonamassa fan.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah. The blues guitarists, man, of that ilk. So like, Steve Vai and others. But I thought it was funny because I was watching this Joe Bonamassa thing, which is a PBS thing, which meant that they were using Joe Bonamassa's concert to raise like awareness and support for public TV. And then you switch over to the Oscars, and it felt like the Oscars theme was raising awareness and support for theaters. And it was hard to decide which one was trying to ask for my attention more.
Yeah.
If there was one theme from the Oscars, it was stop streaming everything.
Please. I mean, we kind of don't care because there's a lot of streaming services and we're all getting hired more because there's just more volumes of content. But if you could go to the theaters, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joe Bonamassa opened for BB King as a child.
Yeah.
I mean, the chops on that guy.
I am ready for an era like that to come back around.
Amen, dude.
Of blues guitarists who can kill it. And Stevie Ray Vaughan is one of my favorite musicians of all time.
I was going to ask if you put him in that camp or if he's kind of, since we're talking categories, if he's kind of on his own.
I think he's in that camp in part by association. I think he had there's relationship there, particularly with Steve Vai, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I put him in there. It's the same kind of sound.
Yeah, awesome. Dylan, what was your take on the Oscars, or did you not watch?
I did. Yeah, I watched the SAG Awards and the Oscars. It was good. Probably a few things that I'm going to watch eventually. A little surprised how well Anora did, not because I've seen it, just kind of came out of nowhere for me. It wasn't on my radar. But sounds like it was mostly well received. Maybe a little bit of a surprise, but mostly well received. The hosting was good. I like Billy Crystal came out with Meg Ryan to do an award, and he I think his first line was like, "Hey, I used to work here," because he had hosted something like 9 times. They had a funny bit with Adam Sandler. They had a funny bit with Third Rock from the Sun. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name.
John Lithgow?
They had a kind of a funny thing with him about if people talk too long. Adrian Brody talked too long. That was a little bit of drama, but it was just boring. It wasn't a great speech. It was fine. But yeah, Wicked, I think Wicked won something. And I know at the SAG Awards, I talked about Shogun doing really well. And yeah, it was good. Nothing felt shocking, or there was no slap heard around the world or anything like outrageously crazy from a host. Or one thing that was kind of interesting, Ben Stiller came out to do an award and was talking about production design, and he was on a riser that came up to the stage, which didn't work. And so he's like trying to jump up and down. And so I'm thinking, oh, it's a bit because production design, they're joking about him not being able to get to the stage and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, funny bit. It was fun. He did it. It was very physical comedy. It was funny. And then I haven't heard anything else other than iHeartRadio said it was an actual failure of the stage. And then I'm like, but it felt exactly like they were doing a thing. Or if it really was the thing not coming up, then he just played it up to be funny because that's what the category was. So that was pretty amusing. And then Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande sang kind of a mashup of things, which was nice. Yeah, it was good. It was good. Yeah, no crazy takeaways. Probably gonna watch Anora. That's
The
the only one
Academy
that I felt like I needed to see after.
the Academy's going to look at the ratings this week and be like, man, we really could have used somebody to slap somebody else.
Maybe Ricky Gervais will come back for another host again, or maybe we get Seth MacFarlane. I thought it was kind of crazy. So Anora's director, I think, was Sean Baker. Um, Somebody put the stat out. If it's true, he's the only person to. There's only him and one other person that have won 4 Oscars in the same night for the same movie, and it was Walt Disney.
Hmm.
So that's
Wow.
pretty wild for that to be a stat if you're in company with Walt Disney. So good for him and good for Nora. I think it was made for $6 million. So indie films getting a nice shout.
Couple of things I streamed on the flight over that I want to tell you guys about. One of them I already texted you guys to definitely watch. If you're a dad and you like comedy, do yourself a favor and watch Seth Meyers' Dad Man Walking on HBO. Seth Meyers, very much. He had another one, Lobby Baby, that did very well. People are saying this is easily better. It's very John Mulaney, very clever writing, really smart writing, but he delivers it with really excellent timing. There are multiple parts. You've seen comics do this. When they get an applause break during a special, they'll walk over to the stool and take a sip of water. He had to do this multiple times, but not because he was getting an applause break, because he had to walk over and give the audience time to catch up with the joke he made or the callback he made. And then once they caught it and like laughed, he kind of smirked like he was a step ahead of
Yeah.
the audience. And just so many really, really funny, relatable stuff about being a dad. And I won't give away his jokes or get into it, except for one thing I will say because I related so much. He's like, you guys, I love my kids. They're amazing. But some of the things they do really annoys me. And at the top of that list is the way my kids throw dice. He's like, hey, kids, we're playing Monopoly tonight. And if you keep it on the board, you win. He's like, it's so annoying. I hate it so much. So just stuff like that. Really, really good. So Seth Meyers, Dead Man Walking. I watched the Christopher Reeve documentary, Superman, and that was really, really good. I remember a lot of that happening in the news when I was growing up, and it was just interesting to get that take on that story, and him as an actor and some of it. I didn't realize how close he was to Robin Williams, and a lot of that. They brought in a lot of actors to sort of speak and tell the story. That was really good and thoughtful. Something though that I'm watching with my kid, and it's really fun when you're watching a show with one of your kids and talking about it. Arcane on Netflix. It's been out for a minute, but it's easily one of the most beautiful animated series I've ever seen. I very much thought this about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. You guys know I talked about that a lot when we did our own middies, and maybe we should get back to doing that again. But um, Brian Mattias, a friend of mine who works for Lucasfilm, and I've mentioned before on this podcast, he does some of the character and costume designs for Mandalorian and other Star Wars content. He said Arcane is one of the most beautiful things he's ever seen in his life. Every shot is like a painting, and the storytelling is really good. There are 2 seasons and done. But I'm watching season 1 to get caught up because my daughter Lily will not shut up about it. She's like, Dad, catch up. We need to talk about it. She watched the series finale and was devastated by a few things that had happened, but it's really, really fun. Brad, friend of the show, said, dude, you got to watch this. So if you're like into sort of steampunk fantasy, action with like lots of different like there are lots of love interests and power plays, different factions of people trying to like harness different literal power and figurative power and gameplay and backstabbing and animation, all with like really under the banner of really beautiful animation. Check out Arcane. So that's kind of what I've been streaming. How about you guys? What's up?
I've got nothing else other than uh, an interesting thing that just makes me want to get back into WWE, but it's not going to happen. It came across my YouTube feed that John Cena and The Rock, we're heading into WrestleMania. We're in like ramp up to WrestleMania right now. And Cody Rhodes is still champion. I didn't know that until yesterday. And John Cena has now turned heel with The Rock.
Oh boy.
And so they're both going to be involved in WrestleMania somehow.
John Cena and The Rock as heels. That's an interesting time. That might oof.
Anyway.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's fun. That's about all I know from WWE. But I heard that and I was like, oh, that's fun.
Let's mention hockey real quick, Kendall, since you just shared. Did you see the jacket Red Wings in Ohio Stadium with special guest 21 Pilots?
The 21 Pilots was amazing. The game was really good. It was like for a hockey fan to watch that game. It was a really fun game. It was a story of there's a team that was playing better hockey almost the entire game, and then it falls apart and sort of like the closing stretch of the game, and the Blue Jackets ended up winning that game, which also is important because both of them are right there fighting right along that line of playoffs.
Yeah.
So it was a good game to watch in that respect, but then also just a good story of a hockey game.
Yeah.
And then the atmosphere and everything else was amazing. Ohio Stadium did a wonderful job. It was great.
We had multiple friends there. We didn't go, and I feel my wife somewhere going, you only watched part of that game because I told you about it and told you the significance of it. And she's absolutely right. I did. I walked in and she was already watching it, and so she filled me in on why it was. But I did know enough to know that Columbus Blue Jackets playing in Ohio Stadium that seats whatever it is, 100 and I forget how many tens of thousands.
102 something.
102,000 people with special guests who put on a halftime show that I watched live at the quality of like a Super Bowl halftime performance from Columbus, the 21 Pilots, New Albany specifically. So it was just like a lot of love for Ohio. And I love that the 21 Pilots guy, Tyler, gets up and he goes, right now, there's only two places, according to us, right here and everywhere else. And it was just really cool to see that. It was just a lot of Ohio love.
It was good. On the record books for the second most attended NHL hockey game.
It's awesome. Ever. Dylan, what are you streaming, my man?
Not a whole lot since the last time we recorded, but lots coming up. So I still need to see Captain America 4. Thunderbolts is coming out. Daredevil drops this week, the new season. Andor, the new season. Star Wars on Disney Plus. Plus other movies and stuff. There's going to be a lot of Marvel and Star Wars this year, which I am not mad about. I feel like while I was out of office a couple weeks ago, I did some of the artsy stuff that I had talked about. So it'll be fun to watch some blockbusters and see some new shows. So I'm sure I'll have more updates in the coming weeks.
All right. Sounds good. Well, this feels like a wonderful place to wrap it up. It's been fun hanging out with you guys for a bit on this Wednesday. Thank you for tuning in to From the Middle. Thank you to Artius Man, our sponsor, who makes amazing men's grooming products made with natural ingredients right here in Central Ohio. We appreciate their partnership. Be sure to check out artiusman.com. That's ARTIUSMAN.com. Use promo code The Middle at checkout to get 25% off your order. And that'd be awesome. We'd appreciate it. We love hanging out with you guys. Comment below or send us a text or voicemail about some things you would like for us to talk about, or if you'd like to weigh in on what we've brought up on this episode, or check out TeePublic for our merch. If you want our From the Middle logo merch or our Underthinker merch, that is available now. You can have it printed on literally anything, and we would appreciate you supporting us in that way. So thanks all. Have a good week, and we'll see you next Wednesday on From the Middle.